Do you be goat? Do you be goat? Do you be goat? Do you be goat? Do you be fish? Do you be fish? Do you be fish? Do you be goat? Do you be goat? Or do you be fish? Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Well, goat are of the land and fish are of the sea. But goat versus fish, which one do you be? Do you be goat or a fish? Do you be goat or a fish? Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Now repeat after goat versus fish. Dooby 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 a dooby goat, dooby goat, dooby goat, dooby goat, or dooby fish, a dooby goat or a fish, because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Well, goat versus fish came up to me and said, a goat or a fish, which one do you be? Do you be goat or a fish? 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 Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. The medieval fence sitter sits on the fence. But the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish?
Make some noise for the goat, make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat, make some noise for the goat. Celebration Thunder Tracks. Welcome again to Goat versus Fish. Welcome again to Goat versus Fish.
Goat versus fish.
This is the current versus. This is the current versus.
Goat versus fish.
This shall be a mighty versus. Are you goat or fish? Are you goat or are you fish? This is the versus. Are you goat or are you fish? 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 This is the versus. Are you goat or are you fish? 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 fish? Are you goat or are you 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 fish? Are you fish? Goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? This shall be mighty versus.
Goat versus fish. Welcome, goat and fish, to another exciting versus of goat versus fish. To another exciting versus of goat versus fish. This is an interesting versus. This is an interesting versus. Watch this versus. Have a look at that versus of goat versus fish. Look, we can look at the chat here on goat versus fish. Isn't this a fun versus? Goat versus fish in the corner of the versus. Goat versus fish can be anywhere. Can be goat versus fish. We can be here. Can be goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. How about this versus? How about goat versus fish like this? How about goat versus fish like this?
Do you be goat?
How about this is goat versus fish?
Do you be fish?
We can do this versus.
Do you be goat? Because the goats do be goat.
Now goat versus fish is just.
Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Well, goats are of the land, and fish are of the sea. But goat versus fish, which one do you be? Do you be goat or a fish? Do you be goat or a fish? Because the goats do be goat.
Floor goat.
And the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish?
Floor goat. So there's goat versus fish in the versus there. Just looking at your. Just looking at your chats, reading the chats of goat versus fish. Floor goat. Floor goat. Make some noise for floor goat.
Now repeat.
We've got
Repeat.
then we've got
After
floor
goat
fish.
versus fish. Doobie 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 doobie.
We can just walk about. We can be on the chat, goat and fish. Goat versus fish can be anywhere in the verses. Many mighty verses. Many mighty verses. Celebration.
Don't sit on the fence. Well, goat versus fish came up to me and said,
Celebration for goat versus
which
fish.
one do you be? Do you be goat or a
Celebration
fish?
for goat
Do you be
versus
goat or a
fish.
fish? Do you be goat or a fish?
Your feet are on
Do you be goat or
fire.
a fish? Because the goats do be
Flaming feet of goat versus fish. Fish swim together. Celebration. Anarchist tech support. Danger tater. Goat's tired. Tired goat. Sleepy goat. Matthew Big versus fish. Step on us, goat versus fish. Step on us, goat versus fish.
Because the goats do be
Goat
goats
versus
and
fish.
the fish do be fish. The
Oh, well, we would need to. Here, you step on. You just get. Goat versus fish is totally in step. Goat versus fish is totally in step. Step, step, step. One more versus. 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 One more versus.
do you be goat or a fish?
Welcome to Goat versus Fish. Enjoy the verses. Enjoy the verses.
Make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat.
Enjoy the verses of Goat versus Fish.
For the goat. Make some noise for the goat.
Enjoy the verses of Goat versus Fish.
Welcome again to
It's an excellent verses.
Welcome again to Goat versus Fish.
Powerful verses.
This shall be a mighty versus. This is the current versus.
It's an excellent and powerful verses. An excellent and powerful verses. Speaking of excellent and powerful verses, it's time to start the verses anew. It's time to start the verses anew.
Make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat.
Say farewell to old verses. The goats triumphed in the post verses, last verses, and the post verses verses. Many verses, peaceful gangsta, many verses. Many verses on Kick, many verses on Twitch, many verses on YouTube. Verses all around, verses all around. Relentless verses of Goat versus Fish. The verses do not end. The verses do not end. So let's count the goat and fish. Let's count the goat and fish.
Are you goat or are you fish? This is the versus.
Or fish. Are you goat or fish?
Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish?
Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Let's make your declarations. Declarations now on Goat versus Fish. Let's make our declarations now on Goat versus Fish. Celebrations, we've got some gigantifications. We have a gigantification from Danger Tater for fish, and we have a gigantification goat from Danger Tater for goat. So that's 30 bits for goat, 30 bits for fish, 30 bits for goat, 30 bits for fish. That's 60 bits each for goat and for fish. 60 bits each for goat and for fish. 60 bits each for goat and for fish. But Danger Tater declares goat. Danger Tater declares goat. Celebration for goat, celebration for goat. Celebration for goat. In the verses. That's one goat, celebration for goat. Hazemaker for 20. Fish. Celebration for fish. Celebration for Hazemaker for 20 fish. And we've got 10 bits for swimming together fish. So that's 10 more bits for fish. 70 bits. 70 bits for fish. Appreciation for this contribution. 30 bits from Zazula for goat. 30 for goat. It's 90 for goat. 70 for fish. Goat are leading the bits by 20 verses. The bits by 20 verses. Anarchist sext support. Well, that's a whole other verses. Zazila with goat. Celebration for goat. We've got Zazila goat. Danger Tater goat. Anarchist tech support fish. Or are you fish? We want to know the verses. We want you to choose goat or fish. We've got Peaceful Gangsta the fish on Kick. Peaceful Gangsta the kick fish. Celebration. Anarchist support. 30 bits of support for fish. That puts fish at 100 for fish. And goat at 90. 100. Goat 90. 90 for goat. 90 for goat. 100 for fish. 90 for goat, 100 for fish. Sex for fish. Fish. Want to get down with local goats in your area? Old nannies. Versus. They're horses in your area. Goats. Horny goats in your area. Fish. We have 100 for fish, 90 for goat. We have declarations of goat and 2 declarations of fish. Are you goat? Or are you fish? The Uber Kitten says 4 legs are better than none goat. Uber Kitten goes goat. Celebration for goat. Celebration, fish swim together. We do not deny that there are reasons that fish do what they do. And there are verses that goat do what they do. 100 for fish. Celebration. Celebration for goat and for fish. Celebration for goat and for fish. For goat and for fish. We can even do this verses. We can even do this verses. And we can put goat versus fish even more centrally if we wanted to do that kind of verses. There's so much that can be done on goat versus fish. There's so much that can be done on goat versus fish. That's what makes it such special verses. Versus, are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish?
Now repeat.
We be.
Repeat after goat versus
We
fish.
be. We be, and then goat versus fish. We can put ourselves in this verses like this. And we can just have the chat behind goat versus fish like this. Interesting verses. It's a whole other verses. It's a whole other styling of verses. Doobie goat, or doobie fish. We could do a flat verses, but we kind of like this angular verses. Dynamic angular type verse.
Well, goat versus fish came up to me and said, a goat or a fish, which one do you be?
Do you be goat or a fish? Do you be goat or a fish? Do you be goat or a fish? Do you be goat or a fish?
Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat?
We could even do that verses and have verses within verses. Goat and a fish, goat or a fish, goat or a fish, goat or a fish, goat or a fish.
Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. The medieval fancy
Glorious celebration.
sits on the
Glorious celebration. Glorious celebration. Glorious celebration. So pondering now, goat and fish, pondering now, goat and fish. A poll in goat versus fish. We need a poll in goat versus fish.
Do you be goat or a fish?
Because goat and fish. All verses must have a poll. All verses must begin with a poll of goat versus fish. By the verses of goat versus fish.
Make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat.
So let's get goat in the verses.
For the goat. Make some noise for the goat.
You could vote for goat.
Operation Thunder Checks. Welcome again to Goat
You could vote for fish. Autumn Samurai, welcome back to goat versus fish. Autumn Samurai, welcome back to goat versus fish. Nice to have you in the verses. How goes your triumphs? Ten-minute poll begins now on goat versus fish. Ah!
Make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat. This shall be a mighty
Clam versus lizard is a false versus. Clam versus lizard is a false versus. Stop yelling at goat versus fish. Stop yelling at goat versus fish.
Are you goat or are you fish? This is the versus. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat?
Stop yelling at goat versus. We know. Are you goat or are you fish? 30 bits for the fence. 30 bits for the fence. 30 bits for the fence. Danger Tater. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Autumn Samurai says Saba Pepe fish. Says Saba Pepe fish. Says fish, 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 fish. It's fish, fish, fish. Autumn Samurai Fish Poggers. Celebration. Celebration, celebration. Commodore Friday. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or fish? Are you goat or fish? A poll has begun on goat versus fish. There is a poll on goat versus fish, and look at this. We can see the poll right there in the verses. Celebration. We can see the poll right there in the verses. Fish, fish, Commodore Friday, fish spin, fish spin. Goat or fish, fish, goat. Creating a YouTube poll now, creating a YouTube poll. Are you goat or are you fish? Big homie Lolo. Celebration. Welcome back to Goat versus Fish. Big homie. Celebration. Now that's a fine versus. Brought to you by Drew John. The YouTube poll has begun. If you are not subscribed to Goat vs. Fish on YouTube, go subscribe to Goat vs. Fish and vote in the poll in the live stream of Goat vs. Fish. And vote in the live stream of Goat vs. Fish. And we've got Big Homie Lolo with a celebration for Goat, with a celebration for Goat. And Murders by Spoons follows Goat vs. Fish. Welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? I've been asking myself that question my whole life. But now the time is right for you to choose goat or fish. Ponder it, ponder it. To bitch. With the fish, with the fish, with the fish. Celebration for fish. Celebration for fish. Welcome back to Goat vs. Fish. Welcome back to Goat vs. Fish.
Do you be goat?
Welcome back to Goat vs. Fish. It is a lovely song of Goat vs. Fish. Fish, there is no fish yoga though. There is no fish yoga though. Aww. But there is goat yoga. Celebration for fish. Murder Spoons chooses fish. Celebration for fish. How far back in the 20th century history does Goat vs. Fish go? In the beginning, there was Goat vs. Fish. In the beginning there was goat versus fish. In the beginning there was goat versus fish. In the beginning there was goat versus fish. T-minus 2011, welcome to Goat versus Fish. T-minus 2011, are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? T-minus 2011. Are you goat or are you fish? The poll continues with goat with 176 and fish. And fish with 93 votes and fish with 92 votes and a unification for 2 and unification for 2. T-minus 2011, welcome back to Goat versus Fish. Yes. We've got new viewers on Goat versus Fish. If you wish, drop a follow to Goat versus Fish. Drop a follow to Goat versus Fish. If you wish, drop a follow to Goat versus Fish. We've got big epic verses. We've got big epic verses. Fence at 2 votes? No, it is the unification of GoatFish that has 2 votes. There are no votes for Fence. There are no votes for Fence. No votes for Fence. T-minus with Goat. T-minus with Goat emote. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Goat, Goat. There is your Goat, T-minus. Your Goat is there in the verses. When you declare goat or fish on Goat versus Fish, you become part of the verses of Goat versus Fish, and you are welcome to Goat versus Fish. And you are welcome to Goat versus Fish. A purple, hazed, danger tater goat puts goat at 110 bits, and fish only at 100 bits. Goat is now leading fish. Goat is now leading fish. You can also support Goat versus Fish with radiations, marble wins, poll victories, and subscriptions to Goat versus Fish. Or exclamation tip to Goat versus Fish, or exclamation tip to Goat versus Fish. And 418 for Goat. Goat are relentless this versus. Goat are relentless this versus. And guess what, Goat and Fish? You cannot perceive it. You cannot even perceive it. Ooh, fish, 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 fish. Fish, fish, fish. 120 bits for fish, 120 bits for fish. 120 bits for fish. I believe how cults work. I can be persuaded. Yes. Be persuaded by Goat versus Fish. Be persuaded by Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish only asks of you 3 things. That you choose Goat or Fish. Follow Goat versus Fish. And share Goat versus Fish. By asking someone you know, are you goat or are you fish? Celebration! We do not know why it is not using the custom alerts for a Goat versus Fish. Something got fenced up in the verses. But T-minus 2011 with a gifted verses to anarchist tech support. Celebration. T-minus chose Goat or Fish. T-minus, are you Goat or Fish? Anarchist tech support with 20 bits for Fish. With 20 bits for Fish puts Fish back in the lead over Goat. But T-minus with Goat. T-minus with Goat. Goatscription. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Anarchist tech support with a second gifted verses. That's 2 Goatscriptions in the verses. That's 2 Goatscriptions in the verses. That's 2 Goatscriptions in the verses. Makes a noise for anarchist tech support. Anarchist tech support. Anarchist tech support. Blasphemous. Celebration Goat. Blasphemous. Celebration Goat. Blasphemous. Celebration Goat, and Goat won the poll with Blasphemous at 3,780 channel points. That's a poll for Goat. That's one big poll win for Goat. That's a big poll win for Goat and Blasphemous Goat. That's 2 gifted verses. That's 2 gifted verses and a celebration for Fish. 2 gifted verses. 2 gifted verses. Celebration. Celebration for the gift of Goat, for the gift of Goat. For the gift of GOAT, for the gift of GOAT. We think that for the gift of GOAT, you deserve verses. You deserve verses, a celebration. GoatVsFish, exclamation play. There's a secret marbleization race happening right now. Secret marbleization race happening right now. Secret marbleization race happening right now on GoatVsFish. You'd better get in the verses. You'd better get in the verses, because there's a secret verses. There's a secret type verses. We need to celebrate these two gifted verses. We need a celebration of these two gifted verses. You feel like there is sacrifice? If you wish to sacrifice yourself to GoatVsFish, we do not ask that you end yourself. Do not sacrifice to GoatVsFish. Give to GoatVsFish. Give your life to GoatVsFish, but do not sacrifice yourself. If you sacrifice yourself, you have no life left to give to GoatVsFish. We don't want that to happen on GoatVsFish. Celebrate some more fish, celebrate some more goat. The hype training continues, the hype training continues. The hype training continues. The hype training continues. Hype training continues. Hype training continues. We have two gifted verses. We have two gifted verses from T-minus 2000. T-minus 2011. T-minus 2011 with two gifted, was it not two gifted verses? The gifted verses, Anarchist Tech Support gifted verses, and T-minus. Wait, Anarchist Tech Support gifted verses. Anarchist Tech Support is fish. Anarchist Tech Support is fish. It is Anarchist versus T-minus. It's not 2 subscription points for Goat. That's 1 subscription point for Goat and 1 subscription point for fish. Celebration! The reanimation of Tom Green, who sits on the fence.
My bum is on the rail. Bum is on the rail. Look at me. My bum is on the rail.
Fence sitter. Fence sitter. Fenciness. Can't stand this versus. GoatVsFish. The Skench follows GoatVsFish. Let's for 2 gifted verses. It's Anarchist Tech Support. It's Anarchist Tech Support and T-minus 2011. get sex support. T-minus 2011. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you a goat or a fish or a fish or goat? Are you a goat or a fish or a fish or goat? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you goat or fish? Are you a goat or a fish or a fish or goat? Are you a goat or a fish or a fish or goat? But don't go sitting on the fence. On the fence. On the fence. Fence. On the fence. On the fence. Don't go sitting on that fence-a-lee fence. Are you goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you goat or fish? Are you goat or fish? Goat versus fish versus goat versus fish versus goat versus fish. Are you goat or a fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you a goat or are you a fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or a fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Don't go sitting on the fence. Don't go sitting on the fence. Oh, Marlin, please believe me. I'll never versus a goat. Believe me when I tell you I'll never versus a goat. Oh, Marlin, if you leave me, I'll never is alone. Believe me when I tell you I'll never versus alone. When you told me you wouldn't verse me, oh, well, you know, I nearly broke down and cried. When you told me you wouldn't verse me anymore, well, you know, I nearly fell down. You know, I nearly fell down. Said, you know, I nearly fell down. you a goat or a fish or a fish or a goat? Just don't go sitting on the fence. Interesting verses. Do you know that verse is oh Marlin? Well, listen to these verses. Watch this verses of Goat versus Fish. Josella Fish. Watch this verses. This verses. So let's say you're versing oh Marlin. Oh, Marlin, please believe me. I'll never versus a goat. Are you a goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Goat, fish, goat, fish. Are you goat or fish? Oh, Marlin, please believe me. A goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you goat or a fish? Are you a goat or 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 a fish? Are you a goat or 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 a fish? Don't go and sit on the fence. Don't go and sit up on the fence. Are you a goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Goat or a fish? Goat or a fish? Appreciation for the gifted subscriptions to Goat vs. Fish. Appreciation for the gifted subs to Goat vs. Fish. Appreciation for the gifted subs to Goat vs. Fish. And now that we have celebration, the gifted subs to Goat vs. Fish, we can just lay down the guitar of Goat vs. Fish. We can lay down the guitar of Goat vs. Fish. And we can get on with the mighty verses, Hobby Ramo Goat. Hobby Ramo Goat. Mighty Goat, mighty Goat. Mighty fine goat. Hobby Ramo was a mighty fine goat. Adam S. was a fine, fine fish. And we can get back. Back in the verses, back in the verse. Back in the verses, back in the verse. Back in the verses, back in the verse. Back in the verses, back in the verses, back in the verses, back in the verses. Back in the verses. And suddenly we were back in the verses, back in the verse, 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 back in the verse. Back in the verse, back in the verse, back in the verse. Yes, play with Goat vs. Fish. Ooh, what happened to the musicians? Hey, Goat vs. Fish. There's the verses. There's the verses. Let's see who we've got on Goat vs. Fish. We got Hobby Ramo. Hobby Ramo, are you goat or are you fish? Adam S. is a proud fish. Celebration for fish. Adam S. gets your fish in the verses. Adam S. gets your fish in the verses. If you leave me, I'm gonna be a fishbone. Josilla Fish, the fence is in a sad state of affairs. Indeed, Squid a Deer, the fish, in the verses, celebration for fish, celebration for fish. Squid a Deer's in the verses. Burned Fish is in the verses with a celebration for fish. Lots of fish this verses, lots of fish. We have 110 bits. 110 bits for Goat and 120 bits for Fish. Hobby Ramo, undercover fish spy, but is now back to being Goat. Celebration for Goat, celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. And here's a marbleization race, Goat and Fish. A marbleization race, 69 seconds to join the verses. We warned you. Exclamation play to join Goat vs. Fish. Exclamation play to join Goat vs. Fish. To join Goat vs. Fish. The Sketch, are you goat or are you fish? And in the verses of Marbleization, yes, Hazemaker 420, yes. We've got the Uber Kitten, we've got Hazemaker 420, we've got Anarchist Tech Support, we've got Hobby Ramo, we've got Blasphemous, we've got Goat vs. Fish, we've got Big Homie Olio, Big Homie Lolo, Danger Tato, Big Homie Lolo. Do you know what it is you are calling yourself, Big Homie Lolo? Do you know? Do you know, Big Homie Lolo? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know Big Homie Lolo? I am Big, I am Homie, I am Lolo, and Lolo is GOAT. Did you speak to Lolo? Do you know Lolo is GOAT? Big Homie Lolo, celebration. Celebration for Big Homie Lolo. And it's blasphemous. It's blasphemous and Hobby Ramo. Uber Kitten gets cheated, but Hobby Ramo takes the verses, followed by Blasphemous. Hobby Ramo the GOAT. That's a GOAT win for Marbleization. GOAT Marbleization win. GOAT wins again. Again a win for GOAT. Sucked in fish. So, Big Homie Lolo, is it bringing back any verses? Is it bringing back any verses? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you a goat or are you fish? Are you a goat or fish?
Are you goat? Are you fish? Are you goat or fish? Are you goat? Are you fish? Are you goat or fish?
Oh, Lolo. Is Lolo a goat or a fish? Well, Big Homie Lolo, we have not heard so much from you. Goat, Big Homie Lolo, goat, celebration for goat. Lolo, goat. Lolo, goat. Lolo, goat. Sleepy goat. Listen, it's a late versus. We do not deny that it's a late versus. It's a late versus on Goat versus Fish. We do not deny the lateness of this versus. Big Homie Lolo's going to lurk on Goat versus Fish. Make some noise for Big Homie Lolo. Make some noise for Big Homie Lolo on Goat versus Fish. Anarchist tech support. Anarchist tech support. Goat and Fish. Goat vs. Fish has been promotion the new hit single of Goat vs. Fish to the Dr. Demento show. Goat vs. Fish wants to hear from anarchist tech support, perhaps. Is there anyone in the chat now who has not requested Do You Be Goat or Fish to the Dr. Demento show? And if you are saying, what the fence is Goat vs. Fish versing about, then chances are you haven't. We love a late verses. We know you love a late verses, and Goat vs. Fish keeps bringing you late verses. So is there anyone in the chat who says, I have not recommended, who has not yet recommended, because if you have not, we will give you the verses you need. Link it, says Danger Tater. Link it, says Danger Tater. Okay, Goat and Fish. It's time once again for the recommendation of the hit single of Goat vs. Fish.
Do you be goat?
Let's do the verses.
Do you be goat?
Let's do the verses.
Do you be fish? Do you be goat? Because the
Goat do be goat and the fish do be fish.
Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Well, goat are of the land, and fish are of the sea. But goat versus fish, which one do you be? Do you be goat or a fish? Meh. Do you be goat or a fish?
Because the goat do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish?
Don't sit on the fence.
Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Are you goat or a fish?
Now repeat, repeat after goat versus fish. Doobie doobie doobie.
There's the verses. There's the verses, Goat and Fish. There's the verses, Goat and Fish. We go to here, we go to requests on the Dr. Demento show. And we type our name. You put your name in the verses. You put your email in the verses. And here where we make the request, we say, give me, do you be goat or fish? By the mighty Goat versus Fish. Do you be goat or fish by the mighty Goat versus Fish? You do that versus. And then you go down to this place. And you send the verses, and you send the verses. Then you send the verses.
Don't sit on the fence.
Goat versus Fish. The link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. The link is in the chat, and when you have done it, say so to Goat versus Fish. Say so to Goat versus Fish. When you have done the verses, say so to Goat versus Fish. We wait patiently for these verses.
But the goat do be goat, and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a fish?
Celebration for Joezilla, celebration for Joezilla. What's the verses? What's the verses? What's the verses? Celebration strobe, strobe 2. Multi-action verses. Can we copy this verses? Can we copy these verses? Copy these verses, paste the verses. Copy these verses, paste the verses. 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 We're asking some more verses of Goat versus Fish. Paste the verses. 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 Copy that verses. Paste the 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 verses.
Celebration.
Paste the verses. 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 Paste the verses.
Oh, my verses.
Paste the verses.
This shall be a
Goat versus fish.
versus. Are you goat or fish? Are you goat or are you fish? This is the verses. Are you goat or are you fish? 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 Are you goat or are you
Ham mods, I woke up in the middle of the night. I'm not getting back to sleep, so I'm here for fish. Celebration for fish. Ham mods, welcome to Goat versus Fish. When you can't sleep, don't sleep on Goat versus Fish. Don't sleep on Goat versus Fish. Let Goat versus Fish lull you to sleep. Let Goat versus Fish lull you to sleep. Celebration. Danger Tater, have you made the request? Have you made the request? Have you made the request to the Dr. Demento show? Have you done it on Goat versus Fish? Have you done it on Goat versus Fish? Who has made the request on Goat versus Fish? The request is made. Anarchist Tech Support Celebration. 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 Hazemaker 420 requested. Now, Goat and Fish, you only need to request once per month, so if you have already made the request, do not despair. The request has been made. The request has been made on Goat versus Fish. The request has been made. That's 1 versus, 2 versus. Added enthusiasm in a 3-second MP3 file. Celebration. That's 3 more requests for Goat versus Fish. That's 3 more requests for Goat versus Fish. And our last request, Goat and Fish. Do you use Apple Musication? Do you Spotify? Follow Goat versus Fish on Spotify. Like Goat versus Fish. Like the song, add the song of Goat versus Fish, and follow Goat versus Fish on Spotify. Write this very verses. Write this very verses on Goat versus Fish. We're growing Goat versus Fish. We're growing Goat versus Fish. But if you do not do this, you can find it on YouTube of Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Do you be goat or a fish? Do you be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence. Here is the YouTube link to the verses. So many ways to support Goat versus Fish. It's also on Bandcamp and all kinds of other verses. Goat and Fish, we must do this. We must do this to support Goat versus Fish. We simply must do this to support Goat versus Fish. It's just part of the verses. It's just part of the verses. It's just part of the verses of Goat versus Fish. Don't sit on the fence. It's just part of the verses of Goat versus Fish. It's just part of the verses of Goat versus Fish. Goat and Fish, it's a late verses. For now, let's have some easy musications. Some easy musications by the Pandemonium Big Band. Some easy musications by the Pandemonium Big Band. And a random versus a random marbleization. Exclamation play to join marbleization. We're going to put 10 minuets on the verses. 609 seconds to join the verses. Exclamation place 609 verses. And while we do this, it's timing. The timing again has come to repopulation. The Wheel of Verses, to repopulation, the Wheel of Verses. To repopulation, the Wheel of Verses. Here's the Wheel of Verses. The Wheel of Verses. And it's time to add to the Wheel of Verses. Time to add to the Wheel of Verses. The Uber Kitten wants to play, Ham Mods wants to play. In the verses now we have Twisty Goat Milk Run and Pufferfish Circles. But we think it's time to add more to the verses. It's time to add more to the verses. What have we here? Oh. Oh no. We add this to the verses. Goat and Fish. Sometimes we've got Twisty Goat Milk Run, and sometimes we've got Pufferfish Circles, but occasionally you have a false verses. Occasionally you have a false verses. Occasionally you have a false verses. False verses. False verses. Danger Tater, welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Next verses. What this verse is. 2 years and 9 months for Danger Tater. This is a nice verses. This is an excellent verses. Fish. Teach a man to fish wisdom. Teach a man to fish wisdom. Enters the Wheel of Verses. Teach a man to fish wisdom. Goat versus fish. Play, yes, wandering left, yes. Yes. Welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Welcome back. Welcome back to the verses. It's everyone's favorite Riley Ranch returning with more goat. Wheelbarrow of Shrooms. gets added to the verses. Goat versus fish. Danger, danger, danger. Danger, danger. Danger, danger. Hot versus. Danger, danger. Hot versus 3 months of Danger Tater, 3 months of Danger Tater to share for Goat. Goat shares are up, Goat and Fish. Goat shares are up. That's a subscription for Goat. That's 2 subs for Goat. Danger Tater, appreciation and celebration. Wandering Left Fish. Here we have Danger Tater subscription, celebration. And here we have Wandering Left, the fish. Joining the verses of Goat versus Fish, yes. Yes to Goat versus Fish. 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 What's this versus? So we've got false verses, we've got teach a man to fish, we've got wheelbarrow goat, pufferfish circles. So we've got 2 fish, 2 goat. What's this versus? What's this versus? Magical fence. It's kind of fancy, but we suppose that's what gets fence. Add a versus. Magical sky fence. We don't like when the Wheel of Verses gets magical sky fence. And a false versus on Goat versus Fish. Let's add Goat. Goat, triple Goat. Or we will just call it Goat, Goat, Goat. Call it Goat, Goat, Goat. Goat, Goat, Goat has been added to the verses. What about this versus? Bucket fish? Ooh. That's definitely a bucket fish. Celebration! Anarchist sex aboard with the gifted versus to squid. Celebration. Fish. Bucket fish. Bucket fish. We'll call it crafty bucket fish. Crafty bucket fish. One minuet and 39 seconds to join the verses. Crafty bucket fish. We have replenished the Wheel of Verses. Anarchist tech support! Anarchist tech support! Goat and Fish, the Wheel of Verses has been replenished. The Wheel of Verses has been replenished. The Wheel of Verses has been replenished, Goat and Fish. Anarchist tech support with the gifted verses to squid a deer. With the gifted verses to squid a deer. The gifted verses to squid a deer celebration. And we've got 50 seconds left until the marbleization race, and so we think it's time to crank up. It's time to crank up the verses. It's time to crank up the verses. It's time to crank up the verses. It's time to crank up the musications. After all, we've got a marbleization race happening on Goat versus Fish. We've got a marbleization race happening on Goat versus Fish. So let's do a versus. How about Goat versus Fish? How about Goat versus Fish? Goat versus fish musication. Goat versus fish with an excellent pick of musication. Commodore Friday celebration. Feed the tree of verses. Goat versus fish. Wandering left gets shot out and lands on the oh my versus celebration. Wandering left. Wandering left, did you see that versus? Wandering left somehow left in a superior evacuation. And yet it is Commodore Friday who is ahead of them all. Commodore Friday. Celebration, Commodore Friday, are you goat or are you fish? Commodore Friday, was that a win for goat or a win for fish? Say it in the verses. Say it in the verses. Was that a win or a win for fish? A win for fish! Fish not going down so easily. Fish not going down so easily. Fish not going down so easily. With anarchist tech support, Danger Tater. Goat versus fish, anarchist tech support with another gifted versus. Commodore Friday with a marble win for fish. Anarchist tech support with another fish subscription. So that gives us 2 subscriptions for goat. But Danger Tater has a subscription also for goat. So we have 2 subscriptions for goat, 2 subscriptions for fish, 1 marble race for goat, 1 marble race for fish, 1 poll for goat. We have more fish than we have goat. And goat versus fish, anarchist tech support with another gifted versus. 2 ham mods with another gifted versus. With another gifted versus. With another gifted versus. Celebration. Celebration. Do you know what this means, goat and fish? Do you know what this means, goat and fish? Do you know what this means, goat and fish? Goat versus fish has had a goal. Goat versus fish has had a goal. Goat versus fish has had a goal to mail a new shirt of goat versus fish. To mail a new shirt of goat versus fish. To mail a new shirt of goat versus fish. To mail a new shirt of goat versus fish. To mail a new shirt of goat versus fish. For every 15 new subscriptions, Goat versus fish is mailing a new shirt of goat versus fish. Is mailing a new shirt of goat versus fish. Is mailing a new shirt of goat versus fish. Is mailing a new shirt of goat versus fish. Is mailing a new shirt of goat versus fish. Is mailing a new shirt of goat versus fish. We start the verses. We start a new verses. 15 more subscriptions. 15 more subscriptions and we will have another marble race for goat versus fish. But thanks to anarchist tech support, we now have a race for a free shirt of goat versus fish. You know the shirt. You know goat versus fish. Yes. Behold the shirt of Goat versus Fish. Behold the shirt of Goat versus Fish. "15 of 15 has been breached. So it's time. It's time for a marbleization race, but the winner of this marbleization race gets a shirt of Goat versus Fish. If you are living internationally from Goat Fish, then additional shipping may apply. Or you can pass it on to someone else in the verses. Or someone else can pay for your shipping. But this next versus, this next marbleization race, which we will conduct right now, is going to be for a free shirt of Goat versus Fish. For a free shirt of Goat versus Fish. For a free shirt of Goat versus Fish. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Are you ready? Waterfall, this is the versus. This is a very Goat versus Fish kind of place. Look at this place. Isn't this very Goat versus Fish? Celebration for Wandering Left, who has chosen to follow Goat versus Fish. Wandering Left. Wandering Left. We're going to sing a song for Wandering Left for following Goat versus Fish. Goat and Fish, we're having a free shirt giveaway. We're having a free shirt giveaway, and you have 15 minuets to join the verses. 15 minuets to join the verses. Exclamation play to join Goat versus Fish. This is for a shirt of Goat versus Fish. This is for a shirt of Goat versus Fish. This is for a shirt of Goat versus Fish. This is for a shirt of Goat versus Fish. Celebration. The Wanderer. Wandering Left follows Goat versus Fish. Wandering Left Fish. And in celebration of their following of Goat versus Fish and all of these subscriptions to Goat versus Fish, we're going to sing you a song of Goat versus Fish. We're going to sing you a song of Goat versus Fish. That's a fun versus. Okay, Wandering Left. Okay, Wandering Left. This versus is for you. This versus is for you. This versus is for. Well, I'm the catfish who settles down where pretty goats are. You know that I'm around. I verse him and I verse him, because to me they're all the same. Yes, I versus all those goats and they don't even know my name. I'm wandering left. I'm wandering left. I wander round, around, 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 around. Put on my left and there's Nanny on my right. Goat's the one that I'm gonna verse tonight. And when they ask me which one I love the best, well, I tear open my free shirt and it says a goat versus fish. I'm wandering left. I'm wandering left. I wander around. Well, I wander to and fro. I wanna go. I'm as happy as a clownfish with my 2 fists of iron and I'm bursting everywhere. Well, I'm the kind of goat. Yeah, I'm the kind of fish. Said I'm the kind of fish that likes to swim around. I'm never in one versus I swim from town to town. And when I find myself falling for some kind of goat, well, I hop right onto the fence and I verse around the world. They call me a wandering left. They call me a wandering left. I wonder. To swim around, I always swim left. I always swim left, and when I find myself versing for some gold, well, I hop right onto that fence and they call me a wandering left, and I follow the versus fish all around. Dr. Yes-Man! Dr. Yes-Man raids goat versus fish! Dr. Yes-Man raids goat versus fish! The doctor is in! The doctor is in! Yes-Man raids goat versus fish! 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 Are you goat or are you fish? Join the marbleization race. We have coming up now, goat and fish. We have coming up now a race for a free shirt of goat versus fish, and we have a Yes-Man raid on goat versus fish. A Yes-Man raid of goat versus fish, yes. A Yes-Man raid of goat versus fish. And it goes. A little verses. Like this. Star drop it. Let me tell you how it will be. Rate of 15. Oh, 'cause I'm the yes man. Yeah, I'm the yes man. Should of 15 appear too small? Yes, man. Be thankful I rated at all. Yes, man. 'Cause I'm the yes man. Yeah, I'm the yes man. If you choose a goat it's celebration. If you choose fish, it's celebration. If it's goat versus fish, it's celebration. If it's goat versus fish, it's celebration. Yeah. Cause I'm the yes man. Yeah, I'm the yes man. Ask me what I rated for. If you want me knocking at your door. Cause I'm the yes man. Yeah, I'm the yes man. For my advice for those on the fence, you'd better choose a goat or fish. Cause I'm the yes man. Yeah, I'm the yes man. And you're good for no one but me. Definitely gonna highlight this in a lot. Highlight it away from versus fish. Highlight it away from goat versus fish. Highlights away. Highlights away. Highlights away. That was the Yas Man. And we're racing for a shirt of goat versus fish. For a shirt of goat versus fish. For a shirt of goat versus fish. Shirt of goat versus fish. Exclamation play to join goat versus fish. Exclamation play to join goat versus fish. Exclamation play to join goat versus fish. Yes, man.
The electric fence.
Yes, man. MX Matt TV wants to play with goat versus fish. MX Matt TV wants to play with goat versus fish. Dr. Yasman, how was your stream? Glowstick TV wants to play from Kick. Celebration. Welcome Glowstick TV to Goat versus Fish. We don't think you can play from Kick, but we are streaming on Kick in all the verses. Yes, I'm John wants to double the verses. Yes, I'm John wants. Yes, I'm John and Glowstick TV are here in the celebration. 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 There's Glowstick TV back in the verses. Back in the verses. Celebration. Glowstick TV. A mighty verses, and we know that they like to verses on Kick, so we will give a shout out to Glowstick TV on Kick. www.kick.com/GlowstickTV. Goat vs. Fish is, of course, not supposed to link to Goat vs. Fish's stream on Kick on Twitch, but there doesn't seem to be any verses about linking to Glowstick TV on Kick, so celebration. And we'll do a verses for Yes, I'm John while we're versing. Goat vs. Fish! Goat versus fish. This is for a free shirt of Goat versus Fish. This is for a free shirt of Goat versus Fish. Redolent Thought is in the verses for Goat. Redolent Thought is in the verses for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Redolent Thought Goat. For Redolent Thought Goat in the verses. Glowstick TV, are you Goat or Fish? Yes, I'm John, are you Goat or Fish? Are you Goat? Or are you Fish? Redolent Thought is always Goat. Dr. Yasman says, I did the Goblin Sprite today. Lots of fun. I'm so pleased with how they turned out. Dr. Yasman, are you Goat or are you Fish? Yes, I'm John is Goat. Yes, I'm John is Goat. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Celebration for Goat. Damn right is Goat. Dr. Yasman is Goat. Dr. Yasman is Goat. Glowstick TV is on the fence. Glowstick TV is on the fence.
But more important than a particular decision is that it happened in a timely fashion.
You know, the fence wasn't too good. The one that they had up there was falling apart.
The fence, the arch nemesis of Willytown Fest. Oh, the fence, oh, the fence. Breaking fins, and splitting hoofs all over the Willytown fence. All over the Willytown fence. Join us, sister. Oh, Dr. Yasman, welcome to Kick for following Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. And Jake CG says Goat. Jake CG says Goat. Celebration for Goat. We've got 1 minute and 38 seconds to join the Marbleization race. For the free shirt of Goat versus Fish. And Star Drop Thistletown says cake or death. Cake or death, that's a false versus. And we don't care if Eddie Izzard is a goat or a fish. Cake or death is still a false versus. Star Drop Thistledown, are you goat or are you fish? 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 Weed Pipe is in the verses. Celebration for fish. Celebration for fish. Celebration for fish.
We have to be like the little fish that eat the plankton off the big fish. Except in this example, one day we become the big fish, and then we eat the other big fish.
Celebration for fish. Weed Pipe fish. 50 seconds. 50 seconds for Goat versus Fish. 50 seconds for the Marbleization race of Goat versus Fish. 50 seconds for the Marbleization race of Goat versus Fish. And let's play some glow stick. In celebration of glow stick, let's play some glow stick on Goat versus Fish. Let's play some glow stick on Goat versus Fish for this Marbleization race. Twisted fence, twisted like the merry barbed wire of the fence. It's a Marbleization race for a free shirt of Goat versus Fish. Yes, I'm John is over the Sea of the Fish. This is the perfect Marbleization map for Goat versus Fish, is it not? Anonymous Boobs is in the verses. Celebration. Anonymous Boobs are revealing Goat or Fish, but Dr. Yasmin the Raider is coming up from behind. But there are currents in the Sea of the Fish. And Glowstick TV is now leaping somewhat ahead. Anonymous Boobs being tossed about by the very currents. Oh my versus, the Sea of Fish is treacherous. And there comes, yes, I'm John, Redolent Thought, the Uber Kitten springing into verses. Commodore Friday, Jake GC, Matty BX, MX Matty B, and Goat versus Fish. Wet balls indeed. And there's Redolent Thought in the verses. Go, Marbleization, go. Now we have Redolent Thought. How they cycle about, but not until they go through the verses, and it's blasphemous! Celebration for blasphemous! Celebration for blasphemous! Celebration for blasphemous! Celebration for blasphemous! Rigged, you say rigged? What do you mean rigged? What do you mean rigged? What do you mean rigged? How could you believe that Goat versus Fish is rigged when we know for a versus that all marble races are rigged by Goat versus Fish? If you like this musication, you can find it on the link that Goat versus Fish has provided in the very chat to Glow Stick on Spotify. Blasphemous celebration. Blasphemous celebration. That's another marble win for Goat. That's another marble win for Goat. That's another marble win for Goat. So blasphemous. So blasphemous. Do you accept? Do you accept the free shirt of Goat versus Fish? Blasphemous. Accept free shirt of Goat versus Fish. Do you accept the shirt of versus Fish? Blasphemous. Or do you pass it on to the next verses? Or do you pass it on to the next verses? Oh, that was for a shirt. Oh, that was for a shirt. That was for a shirt. Fish. Goat versus Fish. Ask myself, am I goat or fish? Am I goat or fish? Am I fish or goat? I'm on the fence. Wasted worries on the fence. Dale the Parrot is Fish. Celebration for Fish on YouTube. And Blasphemous says, yes, that will take the shirt of Goat versus Fish celebration. 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 Now Goat versus Fish is now Goat versus Fish. Pondering. Goat versus Fish will check to see that we know how to send you a shirt of Goat versus Fish. But next, of course, we're going to spin the wheel of verses, Goat and Fish. It's time to spin the wheel of verses. I wanted a shirt, that's unfair. Well, you'll just have to donation another 15 subscriptions to Goat versus Fish, and then we can have another marbleization race for Goat versus Fish. How about that versus? How about that versus? How about that versus? Blasphemous. Ah, there's Blasphemous. Blasphemous, we have your verses. We know where to send it. We know just where to send it. Blasphemous. Blasphemous. Blasphemous, what size shirt do you wish? Blasphemous, what size shirt do you wish? Blasphemous! What size shirt do you wish? A large versus. Appreciation. Appreciation. Celebration for Fish. Anarchist tech support. Celebration for Fish. We've got Cat Dad. Yo, what's going on? Oh, just another versus of Goat versus Fish. We're about to spin the wheel of verses. We're about to spin the wheel of verses. We have been listening to Glow Stick. Make some celebration for Glow Stick TV. Glow Stick TV, we do not know if you are still here with Goat versus Fish. But Goat versus Fish, we had a pondering. We had a pondering of Goat versus Fish. A strong Goat versus Fish. We know. We know that there was no Lily Town this versus, and this is much to the sadge of a lot of Goat and Fish. Goat versus Fish thought, why abandon Willie Town? Why abandon Willie Town? Could simply do a one-day live streaming Festiverses where anyone who is part of the Willie Town fam, Pondering Suarez and those kind of verses, they just come to the studio of Glowstick and you just say, one day, living stream festival, and because it would be Willie Town 10, which is X, and we know X, and the X of the fence sitter on which the fence sitter sits. The fence sitter, because you know you spell fence with an X, that you call it Willie Town Fence, because it's not Willie Town 10, it's Willie Town Fence, because it's kind of Willie Town, but not really. And then Goat versus Fish comes over and we introduce all the verses and we have a one-day online Festiverse called Willytown Fence. That was the proposition of Goat versus Fish. It's not too late for Willytown Fence. It's not too late for Willytown Fence. But now it is time the versus has come. The time the versus has come. For the wheel of verses, for the wheel of verses, for the wheel of verses. CatDag85, are you goat or are you fish? Let's find the verses. Let's find the verses. Let's find the verses. Let's find the verses. Wheel. Wheel of verses, turn, turn, turn. Wheel of verses, turn. Oh, goat versus fish. Wheel of verses, turn, turn, turn. Wheel of verses, wheel of the verses, wheel of verses, wheel of the verses. Goat versus fish, goat versus fish, goat versus fish, goat versus fish, goat versus fish. That's the verses now. That's the verses. So here, on the wheel of verses, let's see what's on the wheel of verses. Let's see what's on the wheel of verses. We've got goat, 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 crafty bucket fish, puffer fish circles, twisty goat milk run, false verses, teach a man to fish wisdom, Riley wheelbarrow of shrooms, and magical sky fence. Dr. Yasman says the new single is a celebration. Celebration, Dr. Yasman, appreciation. Celebration, Dr. Yasman, appreciation. So it's time to spin the wheel of verses. It's time to spin the wheel of verses. Time to spin the wheel of verses. And let's play that celebration. Now, goat and fish, when we are spinning the wheel of verses, we think you should break out these emoji. Goat and fish, look at that emote. That's totally a wheel of verses type of emote. So when it's time for musication and it's time for wheel of verses, you break out those emotes on Goat versus Fish. There's Commodore Friday. Yes, that's the verses. That's the verses, Commodore Friday. That's the verses. Celebration. Your song is on Apple Musications too. Oh, the song is everywhere on Goat versus Fish. And glow stick with a big old fence in the verses. There's the glow stick fence. What we have determined, at first we thought glow stick to be fence versus fish, but now we realize that we think glow stick just wants the abuse from Goat versus Fish. Fence me harder, Goat versus Fish! Tell me I've been fancy, Goat versus Fish! Very submissive to Goat versus Fish. Very submissive to Goat versus Fish. Time to spin the wheel of verses. Time to spin the wheel of verses. Puffer fish circles. Celebration for puffer fish circles. Puffer fish circles. Goat versus fish. Look at those puffer fish. Look at those puffer fish. Look at those puffer fish. Nibbling on one another, puffer fish. Cute fish. Fish in love. For it is known that the puffer fish creation these very circles within the very sand of the land of the goat, below the sea of the fish. The puffer fish will consume and spit out this land of the goat. They toss it about, in order to attract another fish. All to attract another fish. Oh, the efforts of fish. Oh, how fish through many verses just to attraction another fish, just to attraction another fish. Just to attraction another fish. What really got us on this verses was that nibble of fish. Was just that little lovely nibble of fish. Verses. Can you feel the love in the verses? Can you feel the love in the verses of Goat versus Fish? Goat, Fish, we want your commentation. We want your commentation on Goat versus Fish. If you're a fish, what do you think of this verses? If you're a goat, what do you think of this verses? Even Hobby Ramo the goat has stated that this is a romantic verses. Would look at the love of fish. Some goat would look at the love of fish by the love of the fish. But not Hobby Ramo. Not Hobby Ramo. The fish of two eyes, these two comprise, creating whooper fish. Anarchist, beautiful, loving verses. Goat versus fish. There should be a puffer fish somewhere in the verses. There should be a puffer fish somewhere in the verses. Clown triggerfish, pufferfish has, pufferfish? No pufferfish in that verses. Pufferfish must have gone about to their space, definitely. But pufferfish seems to be fencing around somewhere else. Pufferfish, just when we need you in the verses, pufferfish. You abandoned Goat versus Fish? What the fence? Fence, pufferfish. Now we are concerned with pufferfish. So if you think that you do not know where to find love, consider eating a bunch of sand and making a circle. This has been romantic advice from Fish. And it was written, and it was written. Goat and fish, it's pufferfish. It's pufferfish circle. It's pufferfish circle. It's pufferfish circle on goat versus fish. That was Wheel of Versus. That was Wheel of Versus. But goat and fish, we think that you have been so generous with goat versus fish. You have been so very generous with goat versus fish. With all of these gifted subscriptions and all these verses. Now we think we should perhaps spin the Wheel of Versus once more. Spin the Wheel of Versus once more, goat and fish. Spin the Wheel of Versus once more. Spin the Wheel of Versus. It's Wheelbarrow of Shrooms! Wheelbarrow of Shrooms! What auspicious verses is this when we get Wheelbarrow of Shrooms on Goat versus Fish? Oh, you're in for a celebration this versus. We're in for a celebration this versus on Wheelbarrow of Shrooms. Anarchist tech support says fence to goat versus fish. Fence to goat versus fish. Fence to goat versus fish. Wheelbarrow of shrooms. Wheelbarrow of shrooms, goat and fish. We know. We know we're ready for the wheelbarrow of shrooms, goat and fish. We're ready. Because some verses. There's a shroom. And it takes a goat to consume it. Consumption. Consumption and consumption. 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 Yes, Dr. Yasmin. Yes, a shout out once again for Dr. Yasmin. Who Dr. Goat versus Fish is now following. Goat and Fish, some of you may become familiar now with the Riley Ranch, a perennial source of awesome videos about goat. This is not the last verses that we will be seeing the Riley Ranch on Goat versus Fish. And in the mean verses, do follow Goat versus Fish on the Instagram and follow Goat versus Fish on TikTok. Follow on TikTok Goat versus Fish because we want to get to 1,000 so we can live stream on TikTok Goat and Fish. So we can live stream on TikTok Goat and Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus fish. So, goat and fish, it's timing. It's timing. It's timing, goat and fish. It's timing indeed. It's timing indeed. It's timing indeed. The Wheel of Versus has been spun. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Are you goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. There's the verses. Goat versus fish. Why the fence would it be like this? Why the fence be like this? Why is it expanding out into the verses? Goat versus fish. There's goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Forgive goat versus fish. Just dealing with some run of the verses fenciness to some run of the verses fenciness. And without further offense, it's the Riley Ranch Shrooms. And this is going to be a treat for goat, a treat for goat. A treat for goat, a treat for goat. Let's watch those verses. You can see those goats hiding behind the fence, just waiting to versus those shrooms.
See what the goats think of a wheelbarrow of mushrooms.
Hesitation? 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 Hesitation! 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 Hesitation on goat versus fish! Hesitation by goat! Hesitation by goat!
Wheelbarrow of mushrooms.
Hesitation by goat! Oh, my verses! Hesitation by goat! The goats are said to eat anything, and yet this verses, the goats are not even consuming of the vegetation. We have heard that there are goats in the chat of Goat versus Fish who like shrooms, but these goats aren't having any of that verses. These goats are having none of that verses. These goats are having verses. None of that verses.
Let's see what the goats think of a wheelbarrow of mushrooms.
Goat, how do you explain yourself? Goat, how do you explain your lack of consumption? How do you explain your lack of consumption, goat? Demand verses. Come on, goat. Say you ate anything, well, how do you account for this verses? Anarchist tech support is just reveling in fish, and goat, nothing to say. Nothing to say for goat. Nothing to say for goat. It's 3 in the verses and nothing to say for goat.
Let's see what the goats think of a wheelbarrow of mushrooms.
They don't think much of that verses. They don't think much of that verses. They don't think much of that verses, and Fish Anarchist Tech Support is just taunting the goat, Dr. Yasman says goats will headbutt fish into space. Goats will headbutt fish into space. Dr. Yasman, you seem to be dodging the verses here. Goats say they eat everything, but what has happened to goat? What's happened to goat? What has happened to the claim that goat eat everything at this verses? Blasphemous says goat had a bad experience eating mushrooms before. Dr. Yasman says they're fish-tainted mushrooms. Well, if they're really tainted by fish, then goat should be all about consuming them. Goat should be totally induversing the fish. Unless, but we But we comprehend. Maybe the fish has somehow fenced them up. The fish have fenced up the shrooms so the goats no longer wish to consume. Is this what has happened on Goat versus Fish? How do you answer this versus, Anarchist Tech Support? You have been accused of tainting the shrooms. Dr. Yasman accuses Anarchist Tech Support of tainting these shrooms. How do you respond to this versus? How do you respond to this versus? How do you respond to this strong accusation that you've been tainting the consumption of goat? That you have been tainting the consumption of goat. How do you respond to this versus? The shrooms eat all, there is no tainting fungus, so you claim that the shrooms are eating the goat? Are the shrooms goat or are they fish? Who's doing the consumption here? Who's doing the consumption on Goat versus Fish? Who's doing the consumption on Goat versus Fish? Who's doing the consumption on Goat versus Fish? Is Goat versus Fish doing the consumption? Do we want some consumption for Goat versus Fish? Something to eat for Goat versus Fish? Something to eat for Goat versus Fish? Anarchist Tech Support says the shrooms love all, especially fence. So it's some sort of... It grows on the fence? Ugh. It grows on the fence? It grows on the fence? That sounds disgusting to Goat versus Fish. It sounds repulsive, repugnant, and awful to Goat versus Fish, and awful to Goat versus Fish. Awful to Goat versus Fish. Disgusting to Goat versus Fish. Disgusting to Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Are you a goat? Are you a fish? Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Are you a goat or fish? Are you a goat or fish? Goat versus Fish. Verses have changed to Goat and Fish. Verses have changed to Goat and Fish. Verses have changed. Goat versus Fish, but we suppose we can expectation this on Goat versus Fish.
Do you be goat?
Goat and Fish versus has come to count the verses of Goat versus Fish.
Do you be fish?
To count the verses of Goat versus Fish.
Because the goats do be goat and the fish do be fish. Do you be goat or a
We have 110 bits for Goat and 120 bits for Fish. And 30 for fence. We are going to keep counting up this verses, but Fish has won the verses of the bits. Galaxy Cat is Goat, celebration for Goat. Galaxy Cat on the YouTube is Goat, celebration for Goat. Fish are currently winning the verses with 120 bits, Goat 110 bits. Let's count the Fish. 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, 13 for Fish. 13 for Fish. 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12 for Goat. 13 for Fish and 12 for Goat. It's looking very Fish dominant.
Now repeat after
Digital DAC, are you Goat or Fish? It's looking somewhat dominant for Fish. That's 2 verses for Fish. That's 2 verses for Fish, unless Goat can reverse the verses on the bits or some verses. Or it depends on if Digital DAC is Goat or Fish. Subscription. 3 Fish subscription. 2 Goat subscription. And we did have a Goat radiation. Let us not forget the Goat radiation. Dr. Yasman, the Goat. Radiation of 15, so that's 15 for Goat. So that subscriptions goes to Fish. Subscriptions go to Fish. But radiations go to Goat. Fish. 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 Ah, we found the puffer fish. We found the puffer fish. There was puffer fish. There was puffer fish. So we have bits and the number of Goat and Fish. Digital DAC, Goat or Fish, and subscription. So that's 3 for Fish. That is 3 for Fish. Radiations go to Goat. Radiations go Goat. Marbles go Goat. Marbles go Goat. Polls go Goat. Polls go goat. So if we examination all these verses, ones, twos, threes, fours, that's 2 for goat, that's 2 for goat, that's 3 for goat. That should be 3 for goat. 3 for goat. Raid, marbleization, polls, 3 for goat. Subscriptions, fish. Subscriptions, fish. It's 3 for goat and 3 for fish. It's 3 for goat and 3 for fish. It's 3 for goat and 3 for fish. That's another unification on goat versus fish. That's another unification on goat versus fish. Oh, but in comes Steve level with goat. In comes Steve level with goat. In comes Steve level with goat. Evening the verses between goat and fish. 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 Which means it's no longer a domination for fish. Now it's a unification between goat and fish, between the goat and fish. Which means it's not taken by goat or fish. But a unification of goat and fish can count for a versus for both goat and fish, for both goat and fish. A unification for both goat and fish, but the versus about unification is that unification, if there's an equal number of goat and fish in the verses, if the verses are the same, that it tends to want to favor unification, you see. So because there's 3 verses for goat and only 2 for fish, but there are an equal number of goat to fish, then the verses goes to fish because it wishes to favor unification. You see, it is always trying to push for unification of goat and fish. So we remain in unification unless there's a whole other goat, or unless there can be 20 bits from goat, or a couple of subscriptions from goat, or some verses like this. Goat and fish. Goat and fish. It looks like another unification on goat versus fish. It looks like another unification on goat versus fish. It looks like another unification on goat versus fish. It looks like another unification on goat versus fish. High indeed, Steve. High indeed. Steve level, are you goat or fish? You have answered goat. And welcome back to Goat versus Fish. Goat and fish. The verses will end. The verses will end in 60 seconds. The verses will end in 60 seconds. If you wish to make any further changes to the verses, with donation or subscription or whatever the fence, then you had best do it now. Because the verses is about to come to a close. The verses comes to a close soon. We are currently in unification. We are A cheer! A cheer has happened on Goat versus Fish. 15 anarchist tech support with 15 bits for fish. 15 bits for fish, wanting to ensure the bits of fish, 135 for fish, 135 for fish. Oh, well, we don't want that on Goat versus Fish. Can we just have a countdown without all this fencery around Goat versus Fish? What the fence? What the fence? Goat versus Fish! Goat versus Fish. Fish there with a defensive play of 15 bits to ensure that does not overtake the fish. Anarchist tech support with fish. 135 for fish. Goat and fish, we have achieved unification once more on goat versus fish. We have achieved unification once more on goat versus fish. We have achieved unification once more on goat versus fish. Once more on goat versus fish. Once more unification has been achieved on goat versus fish. It was written, and it was written that it was another unification on goat versus fish. A unification followed by a brief win of goat, but then back to unification on goat versus fish. Back to unification on goat versus fish. Danger tater goat, danger tater goat. Celebration, and celebration for Anarchist Tech Support. Anarchist Tech Support, we award you Fish of the Verses. Anarchist Tech Support gets Fish of the Verses. Anarchist Tech Support gets Fish of the Verses. Maybe we should add that. We should just keep adding things to the verses. Fish of the Verses. Fish of the Verses. Anarchist Tech Support. Fish of the Verses. Celebration. Celebration for the Fish of the Verses. The Verses has come for Radiation Goat and Fish. This has been the third Verses of Fry Versus. There's been a lot of goat versus fish. We've given you a lot of goat versus fish, and we're going to give you more goat versus fish. When you are out in the land and the sea, look about you, look about you. Find one who is lost. Find one who does not know the way. And ask, simply ask, are you goat or are you fish? These are the verses of goat versus fish. Celebration for goat. Celebration for fish. Don't sit on the fence. And it was written. And it was written. Unification. Time for radiation, goat and fish. Time for radiation. Time for radiation. Time for radiation. Mega Mike, celebrate death is versing. Can has bucket. Can has bucket. We're going to host Can has bucket on Kick. We don't meet the conditions for hosting. Okay. Well then fence that. See you, Kick! Next verse is you